Hello, my fun-loving criminals, and welcome to the Santa Podcast here on the Monkey Caviar Podcast Network. I'm Tiny, your host. With me, as always, Adam Levy. Adam, how are you today?
Good, Tiny. How you doing?
Can't complain, can't complain. The world has treated me very well.
Good to hear.
How are things on the West Coast?
Not too bad. Weather's pretty nice. Nice for 3-day weekend. I can't complain about that.
You think it's rainy and shitty here, and they're supposed to be having a big car race in Charlotte, and it's a bunch of rednecks just sitting out there waiting for people to make left turns in the rain, which I think is fantastic.
Oh, yeah.
For all of my South Carolina fans, sorry. Race got rained out. I really don't care. But anyways, we are here to talk about Preacher's pilot podcast. We tried this once before, and we had some technical issues. Hopefully we have gotten past that, and we are moved on to a more succinct type podcast that we hope to be one day when we grow up.
Yes.
So let's get started. If you'll notice, I have a fun podcast slideshow for us. We'll start with this wacky 1950s sci-fi intro that we both thought was silly.
A little out of place, yeah.
It did not fit the tone of the show or anything about the show. It was really just kind of superfluous.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure what the point of that was. I mean, I don't know why, if they just didn't have the budget for anything more realistic looking or just dug something out of the archives and said, hey, let's go with this.
I thought they swiped it from Earth Girls Are Easy.
It's
like
entirely
Jeff
possible.
Goldblum was going to show up and it was going to be Jurassic Park meets Earth Girls Are Easy. It would have been great.
Yeah. Gina Davis cameo.
Right? That'd have been Julie Brown.
Yeah.
But anyways, in Genesis there, well, not Genesis, whatever it is, the power, let's call it,
Yes.
travels through space and time all the way to Africa, where it lands in a priest in front of his flock who blows up.
See, the thing I thought was interesting about this is, in the books we never really saw, when Genesis came to Earth, if Jesse was the first person it went to, or did it choose other targets first before finding its final home? So, this is kind of, cool to see that, Jesse wasn't its first, target, and that it found something, that was worthy about Jesse before finally settling there.
Right, I got to mention that when we first talked about Jesse, but yeah, it obviously went to choose a host, and it wasn't just looking for randomly to be inside Donald Trump or anything where it would go absolutely nut shit crazy.
Yeah.
That would be frightening.
Oh God, can you imagine him with that kind of power?
Doesn't he have it now?
It's something similar, at least.
It's starting to get there a little bit.
A little bit.
So, anyways, he blows up. The whole congregation runs screaming from the place, as you would. And the power tears out of there, knocking the cross down, which is a very iconic comic book image, the upside-down cross.
Yeah.
And all that flows into the main title sequence. Ta-da! It started.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of church, I think of people covered in blood and running scared because, that's just funny for me.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
We're sick.
Yes, yes.
We're
Well,
okay.
we've read this book. We're definitely sick.
Right. And not only did we read it, we liked it.
Yeah, yes.
All right, so we move on from there to our fine hero. We get our taste of the time of the preacher from Willie Nelson there, straight from the comic book.
Yeah, that was one of the few things from the comic book that was, taken directly from the book, put in a very timely manner, and it was very fitting. Had they not gone with that song, I probably would have been a little upset, but they did choose that, and it was just one part of a great soundtrack for this first episode so far.
Yeah, great soundtrack, and a couple of little notes in there, and the little Saint of Killers on the rat water bottle as he walked through and drops part of his sermon. And I think it was an okay way to reveal Jesse if you're not going to go strictly with the comic books and start with them in the diner.
Yeah, I mean, we never saw much of Jesse prior to him getting the power in the book. We saw a little bit here and there of like him as a really young child, but his time in Anvil, we never really got that much of a glimpse of, except like the night before all of this happened. So to kind of set some of this up and see what he's doing and what things are like for him before he gets this power is it's kind of fun.
Do you think they nailed the character as far as how he acts without the power? Like in that first the Tom Landry sermon where he's lost the page and he just kind of beefs it to the end with the answer is being humble.
Well, yes and no. I mean, by this point in the book, he'd pretty much completely given up on life, on his faith and everything. He was just kind of going through the motions. And I kind of got that from him here. You know, he just didn't really seem to care. He dropped stuff, didn't bother picking it up. You know, it was just a matter of just kind of going through the motions for him.
Right. As does happen here in the South, right after church, there's a large barbecue. And I know that doesn't happen out where you are very much. But around here, it's kind of typical.
Really? All right.
Yeah, it's church is church, you know.
Yeah.
The people that go, their Sunday is very all about it. But they're at the big picnic after the church, and Chris Schneck, I can't ever say the name Schneck. Whatever. Anyways, he comes up, complains that his old man's beating on the mom, and he wants Custer to jack him up because he heard that's what he did.
Well, first of all, is it normal for kids to just give preachers beer? I mean, I don't know what the thing is like. I mean, are they allowed to drink?
I'm from the South, so I'm gonna go yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that stuff would just happen.
Well, that struck me as a little odd first, but then yeah, some kid coming up to a preacher and saying, "Hey, can you hurt my dad?" Again, seems a little out of character for anybody.
All right, that's fair. I accept that. That probably not the typical barbecue chatter.
No. But, this kid claims to know that Jesse had some kind of past before he was a preacher and is hoping that he can put those skills to use, to hurt his dad.
Yeah, but put yourself in the spot of the kid. If you're, what's this kid, 10, 12 years old?
Maybe.
And your dad's beating on your mom, and you happen to have access to the cooler, and the preacher's over there talking to Ted, who nobody wants to talk to. So he's like, all right, I can just get him away from him for a second and be like, hey, let's say you take the old bat to the old man's head.
Yeah, I did you a favor. Maybe you can do me a favor.
Right. The kid just was seized an opportunity.
Exactly. I mean, good for him. Good for this kid for being able to recognize this opportunity, but still, it's just kind of weird to, I wouldn't go to any preacher I know and ask him to hurt somebody. Maybe damn him to hell, but, not physical violence. I don't think that was part of the Bible.
Oh, I don't think you're allowed to ask the preacher to beat up your dad. I don't think that you can do that.
No,
and if
I
you
don't
do,
think so.
I don't think the preacher's allowed to go, well, how bad do you want me to beat him?
Yeah, I liked Jesse's response to that whole thing. I mean, him giving, that how bad do you want it, and then just kind of going into, this whole cycle that's going to start because of, this violence. It was a good response from
number
him.
One, as monologue number one for Jess Custer, who rattles off, the violence begets more violence, begets more violence, blah, blah, blah. And he goes on and on until the kid says, well, kind of in a nice screw you, pray for me, preacher.
Yeah.
And Jesse says, for the first time, I would if anyone was listening.
Yeah, that's the first real glimpse of the fact that Jesse has lost his faith.
Right. And that possibly heaven has lost its ears.
Yeah. I mean, take the whole outer space segment with Genesis showing up has done a great job of possibly removing the whole heaven and God aspect from this story. But until we get further in, we're not going to know for sure if that's what they really were going for. It may have just been that Jesse has lost his faith in God entirely. We don't know anything about God having fled heaven. It just seems like he has given up.
But it does put in our hands as people that are fans of the comic book a situation where we can't call something Genesis that we know is Genesis.
Yeah.
Right now we have to call it the power or the spirit, whatever the hell it is.
I mean, even for the most part, Jesse didn't know about Genesis until the end of the first story arc. I mean, from the glimpses we got in heaven in the book, we knew it was Genesis, and we knew that it was a being of immense power, but we haven't really seen any of that in the show so far, other than it caused some African preacher to explode all over his congregation.
All right, and well, I had to explain to my girlfriend who was watching with me what it was and what was going on because she has no frame of reference, which is why I like watching with her because
Yeah.
whenever something goes really absolutely nut shit Garth Ennis crazy, I'm like, okay, babe, now what'd you think of that? She's like, I don't know. So yeah. So watching with her, I had to explain what happened with the African preacher and all that.
Yeah, I had some people ask me some questions, and it's like, I don't know if I can really give you an answer because, the show has kind of taken a departure from the book, so I know what, some of the stuff might mean, but in the context of the show, who's to say that that's going to mean the same thing?
Right. Is it what we think it is, or have they made it something new?
Exactly.
Which is exactly what it is. It's something new. So it's bizarre.
Yeah.
It's very meta.
Yeah, very.
Sorry about that. From there, this is one of my favorite. I took a cap of it because it's the best cap I could possibly get.
I'm trying to see.
We go back to town to see Chief Red Savage is out as mascot, and that Pedro the Prairie Dog has taken his place, and this is not sitting well with the locals.
No, it was a kind of screwball scene that came out of nowhere. Just the sheer amount of violence that erupted over a mascot. I mean, I understand that, in Texas and towns like that, they take their sports very seriously. But to see that just the, the craziness that happened over someone saying, okay, we want to get rid of this offensive mascot and to get something a little less offensive out there.
Well, this is very timely with the Washington Redskins.
Yeah, I mean, that's been going on for years, though. But
it wasn't quite Chief Red Savage, which I think is a fantastic name. And I wish the Redskins would adopt that as their mascot's name.
Yeah, I could see that happening.
But how is Pedro the Prairie Dog not offensive to the Hispanics who live in Texas? Why does the Prairie Dog have to be Hispanic? Why couldn't it be Peter?
Maybe they felt they were replacing one minority with another group of minorities.
That's exactly what they're doing, and I think that's the funniest part of it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I don't think I've ever heard any kind of description of Mexicans compared to prairie dogs or any other animals for that matter, but maybe they just thought Pedro was the first thing they came up with, instead of Peter or Paul or something. I really don't know, but it's just. Yeah.
I think that the movement to the Pedro is just making it offensive to a different group, but I think it's funny.
Yeah, I mean, nobody, the Native Americans have been, railed on for so long, with all the stuff that's happened in history, So I figure, okay, we'll get rid of them. We'll go with a group of minorities that, aren't quite as, don't have as historied past of being persecuted like this, and they maybe it'll be okay. But
could you get Klaus the German Shepherd to be your mascot? Would that be okay?
Well, he's got German in the name. I don't think it would be as offensive to Germans if you call the German Shepherd Klaus.
Well, I'm just saying I'm basing this on the fact that it's Texas.
Yeah.
Now, if this is Montana and they want to go Pedro the Prairie Dog, I don't give a crap. Nobody else does. But Texas being mostly Hispanic at this point, it might go over bad.
Well, but maybe they didn't think it was offensive. Maybe they thought they were, paying some kind of tribute to mentioning
Chief
that there's
Red
a large
Savage.
Yeah, get rid of Red Savage. Acknowledge the large Hispanic population throughout Texas, being close to the border and all that. Maybe they said, okay, this isn't offensive. We're just, honoring, a large part of our population, and some people didn't see it that way.
Don't you think it's robbing us of a possible Saint of Killers Chief Red Savage battle in the future?
Well, I don't know if it would be much of a battle, but if they rob us of the Saint of Killers,
all the way.
Yeah. Yeah, as long as they don't rob us of the Saint of Killers, and then we'll be okay.
Right. So the town folks here erupt into a brawl and battle, and the mayor gets punched in the face by a lady. And Hugo Root, meanwhile, stands over watching Jesse slug from a whiskey bottle in his car, giving no one a ticket.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if it's just he doesn't care, or if this is just his way of, participating in the riot without actually throwing a punch. But yeah, he doesn't seem to really care. He's more concerned with talking to the sheriff and letting him know that his son has been trying to get in touch with him.
That seems to be the whole point of the scene, is that you need to come see Eugene.
Yeah.
And but it did lead to the line of, "You would not want to lose the wife-beating, squirrel-killing redneck vote."
Yeah.
And I think the wife-beating, squirrel-killing redneck vote, we might have pissed off with the NASCAR stuff at the top of the show, but Hugo is taking that to the bank.
Yeah.
Those are his people.
Yeah, he doesn't care. Like in the book, Hugo was a gigantic racist, and they've definitely toned that down. We don't see any of that really from him, in the show, but they've made him a much more likable character than he was in the book.
Yeah, but they haven't had a point to put him in a situation where he's been racist yet.
No, but I mean, even still, when Jesse had made that comment, he still could have come back with something equally offensive about somebody else or something.
Chief Red Savage himself.
Exactly.
Yeah, so basically the whole point of the whole interaction is that you have to come see Eugene, which leaves us going, who is Eugene?
Yeah.
Wait, I know.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that.
And we get to see that Jesse likes to drink a lot.
Well, Jesse drinks, quite a bit. And I don't know if that's important, how much people drug and drink in this.
I mean,
I don't know if it's important.
Well, it's what led to the massacre in Anvil in the book. The night before Genesis showed up, he had gone to the bar, gotten really wasted, and caused a massive scene to the point that everybody in town came to church the next day to see what was going to happen. So in a way that his drinking and his loss of faith kind of attributed to what set up the big part of the story with him leaving Anvil.
Right, which we're not seeing particularly in the show.
We're not there yet.
Stay put.
Yeah.
All right, so from the where were we? We were wife-beating, redneck, squirrel-killing after the picnic, or after the boxing match over the mascot. We get to meet Cassidy for the first time. 30,000 feet in the air, we meet Cassidy telling quite a story about Tijuana and a donkey show. That might be the first time the donkey show has made it to prime time cable television.
Yeah,
I'm not sure anyone has ever dealt with the donkey show. Is it a dilemma? Is it the donkey show issue?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's an issue. It might be an issue for the people participating in it, but I mean, definitely, TV shows don't usually have a lot of need to reference donkey shows, and I'm sure a lot of people weren't really sure what a donkey show is. I'm hoping Google had a run on donkey show searches after that show because people wanted to know what it was.
I'm pretty sure everybody just looked up Clerks 2 and the scene with Kinky Kelly and the sexy stud. And that about do it for donkey shows. That one's done. You've done the donkey show, so we don't need any more of that. But there's a lot of drugs, and he goes into the bathroom on the most well-armed plane in the sky and finds a Bible that is obviously been documented by a sociopath.
Yeah.
And a crazy person has set upon this Bible and marked it all up.
And you see outside of like serial killers' rooms and things like that.
But it's very vague on who these 5 or 6 cats are that are on this plane from Vegas to the sun, apparently.
I had a thought.
Vegas and ended up in Texas, but they were going east. So I'm trying to figure out how it's working.
See, I had a thought about who this group might have been going back to the comic books. There was only one group of people that were ever actually looking for Cassidy, and this goes back to his time before the story starts, when he was in New Orleans, and Les Enfants du Sang, this group of like vampire wannabes that he met while he was there. They come back later on in the book, and they're really trying to hunt him down. And this is the only thing I can think of outside of random vampire hunters, trying to kill him. But again, we don't really know anything about who these people are, why they're after him, how they found him. So I don't know.
All right, and it could give us for the show. It could give us an interesting set of people, at least chasing after Cassidy, which puts everybody else in peril.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to give each of these characters something to motivate them, something to drive them further on. In the books, Cassidy didn't really have that. He was just kind of along for the adventure. So by giving him this little bit of story, you definitely set up future stories for Cassidy in the show.
Yeah, and we hope all of the stories involve crossbows and spears and axes and wine bottles that can be
broken champagne bottles,
like a blood keg.
That was probably one of the most interesting uses of a wine bottle I've ever seen.
To tapping the guy like a blood keg made Kristen go out of her mind. She didn't know what the hell was going on. And I'm sitting here, just dying laughing because I think it's hysterical.
I mean, yeah, it's
obviously
one for the road.
The best bits in the show.
Yeah, definitely.
One of the best bits in the show by far.
So
after he drains a guy of some blood, he jumps out of the plane, sands a parachute. Which kids, don't try this at home.
No. And see, this is one of those things too. With a character, even though he's a vampire, he still is able to take damage, and it doesn't look like he suffered much injury from jumping out of a plane 30,000 feet in the air when we next see him.
Right, I cover that here in a bit, but we'll get to that. And then we jump down, and he splats down into Jesse's breakfast. He's out there eating breakfast, who is interrupted once again by the magnificent Ted, and he gets interrupted by the mayor. He's eating with the lovely Emily, who should have been Brie Olson. Or no, what's her name? Allison Brie.
Allison Brie? Oh, you see, that would have been great.
Totally should have been Allison Brie. God, it just looks like her. I just want Annie Edison in this role. 3 times I've watched it. 3 times I'm like, Annie.
Yeah, I do like.
But yeah, it looks like he doesn't get much time in public without being annoyed by these townspeople. Every one of them. The mayor obviously crushing a little bit on Emily, who blows him off. Well, pretty bad.
Yeah, it was shot down pretty good there. But yeah, I mean, Jesse's the spiritual leader of this town, and people are going to turn to him for guidance. Ted just turns to him for everything because he thinks Jesse apparently has the answer for all of his life's problems. As we've seen 3 or 4 times throughout the episode, with Ted just constantly coming up to him about nonsense.
Because Ted's a horrible person, and we all want Ted to die in the end.
See, I don't know if I'd say horrible, but annoying as shit, definitely.
Oh, absolutely.
He's the kind of person you actively try to avoid.
Character they had.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he was the most. Yeah.
He's the kind of person you actively try to avoid if you're in that kind of position.
I actively have tried to avoid people like that in my daily life. So, yeah, I can imagine. Yeah. It turns out she obviously is crushing on the good Reverend. Obvious prior birthday. She's got 3 kids.
Look at those looks, though. I mean, who would be crushing on him?
He's dreamy. All right, sure, he's dreamy. But 3 kids? You got to be selling more than that if you got 3 kids. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean,
that's a lot. Even for the Reverend,
people that seems to have his back in this town as far as taking care of the church and things like that. So I mean, she's definitely inserted herself into his life in a way that's more than just playing the organ on Sundays. So maybe
one of the first mentions of the mega church with the Starbucks inside gets brought up again later. But do you think there's possible church rivalry going to brew?
It seems like they're definitely setting something up. I mean, why else would you spend a few minutes talking about a church and their Starbucks? And then
maybe they have
their finances. Comparing their finances to see about if they can get an espresso machine in the lobby somewhere. So I mean, it'll be interesting to see if
build a Starbucks in your church. These guys aren't Joel Osteen or anything.
Well, I mean, in the Bible Belt, I'm sure there are these mega churches that do have Starbucks or some other kind of, little fancy places inside.
The town I live in is right next to the town where Jim and Tammy Faye Baker built their Heritage Land amusement park that is now closed and a rotting ghost.
Oh, wow.
Oh, yeah, there's a big, huge, giant, like, tall skyscraper type hotel. Totally empty.
Huh.
It's a ghost. It's creepy. But, yeah, it's just right up the street. So, yeah, that stuff does exist.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Especially around here, Texas.
Yeah.
So I can understand the megachurch, and if they're going to bring that on as a little rivalry thing, I'm okay, because you can will later be able to watch Jesse use his power to pretty much sway the congregation.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious to see how they're going to have him use his powers in this show.
I am too.
Especially because we never really saw him interact with large groups of people once he had his powers. He used his powers. He used it as a weapon, but he used it, for more of a defensive, purposes. Not necessarily to. Yeah, I mean, just seeing him interact with a lot of people. Yeah, I mean, he even talked about it at one point. He's like, you start relying on something like this, and it's gonna, come back to bite you in the ass when it's not there.
Right.
So, I mean, he was always smart about that.
Yeah, I liked that it was never a crutch. It was more of something to use if it was the absolute last resort kind of issue.
Exactly. I mean, it's like a gun. You don't use it all the time. You use it when you need to. So yeah, I mean, we never really saw him use it, man. What?
You don't live in the South. Use your gun all the time.
This is true. Well, at least in the South, they carry it all the time. Whether or not they're actually using it, that I can attest to.
They do, because they got to ask you what bathroom you're going into.
Yeah, do they have to
you're wrong, North Carolina. Stop it.
Yeah.
All right, I'm not going to preach. Then we move back to Africa to see the Blanc and the Fiore finally show up dressed like Dr. Livingston, I presume.
Well, they definitely do a great job of fitting in wherever they go.
Always masters of costume, these two.
Yeah, I really want to know. I really want to know who these guys are supposed to be in this show. You and I know who they're supposed to be, but whether or not that's who they're actually going to be, come the big revelation of who they are, it's still.
Right. I'm not afraid. We're going to talk about it. They are angels in the comic book.
Yes.
And they are a lower level of a seraphy angel, as you were.
Yeah, they're like the administrative angels.
Right. They are the accountants of heaven, basic bookkeeping.
Yeah.
So they're here basically to solve, a problem, because that's what accountants and bookkeepers do.
Yeah.
And this problem just happens to be of mysterious outer space origin.
Yeah. I mean, even in the books, once Genesis got loose, they weren't the ones sent to hunt him down and find out what happened. They eventually got kicked out of heaven for what they did, but their time on Earth was spent in a much different capacity than this show seems to have them set up for.
They unleashed the Saint of Killers.
They did, and that's what eventually led to their fall, and then the opening of a casino.
But this could also, in the long run, lead to the Saint of Killers.
Yeah, I mean, and ultimately that's what I want. You need to bring the Saint of Killers in at some point. He is an essential character to the story.
Agree completely.
But
leave Africa to no words from the angels, and then we finally get our first reveal in Kansas of what is her name? Priscilla Jean Henrietta O'Hare.
And see, this was one of the biggest changes that made absolutely no sense to me. We talked about some of the big character changes that they've between the book and the show, but to completely change her name for no discernible reason, I don't get why they decided to do that.
All right, I'm behind you on that one. That one doesn't make a lot of sense.
She was born Tulip. She has always been known as Tulip. It's not a nickname that she has that her friends call her. She was born Tulip O'Hare. So I don't know what they're
anymore.
No, not anymore. Thanks, Seth Rogen.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Seth Rogen. No, actually, thank you, Seth Rogen. You could have done a lot worse.
This is true.
So I love the reveal of Tulip driving through the cornfield and biting the guy's ear off and shooting the other guy, and then come across these two stranded latchkey kids left at home by bad parents. And the interaction with her and the kids is fantastic.
Yeah, it was probably one of the best scenes aside from Cassidy's airplane sequence in the show so far. And
I liked it.
This is
I
this is
like this
this
scene
is one of
better.
the big casting choices that I was kind of scared of when they first announced all this stuff, and it turns out that actually one of my favorite characters so far in the show.
Yeah, I agree with that. I was afraid because she's not a blonde, blue-eyed Tulip, and that's what I expected, and that's what I wanted. And then you give me this version of Tulip, which I'm okay with because of the name change, I guess. But
Yeah,
I think she's great so far. I really love the interaction with her and the kids, and sitting at the table building the
bazooka.
bazooka as she's talking about basically her relationship with Jesse that these kids have no idea about or care
Yeah.
about.
No, they're just having fun. Some stranger shows up, in a busted up car with the dead guy falling out, and
She corncobbed that
she,
guy.
yeah, I think I saw it was described as one of the most interesting uses of an ear of corn ever on TV.
If I was 10 years old and I saw a girl get out of a car and corncob a guy, I would shit my pants.
But these kids are all about that. That little boy especially, he was like, "Yeah, let's go."
I'm not saying she wouldn't be my hero. I'm just saying I shit my pants, but after I was done, I would gladly build a bazooka with her in the kitchen.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So yeah, my favorite bit is when she locks the kids in the cellar and all hell breaks loose up above, and it's 20 seconds that they're just standing there listening to bullets and lights and explosions, and the sounds end, and they come up, and it's dead bodies, a plane crash, and she's bye guys.
Yeah, yeah, just like that, she's gone. Yeah, I mean, I want to know who's after her that has the resources to send helicopters and mercenaries and whatnot. This map that she stole in this whole scene here. Apparently it has ruffled some very powerful feathers. Some well-connected people to be able to send these kinds of people after her. So again,
I
another
agree. I want to know who's after her because again, if we have people after Cassidy, we have people after Tulip, and Jesse has a whole town of people that just want to see him, kick Donnie Shrek's ass.
yeah,
So there's a lot of people in their orbit that can cause a lot of problems, and I like that because if you're going to give somebody a power like Jesse has, you better have some people that can stop.
yeah, and it seems like everything is going to come to a head in the city of Anvil, and we haven't met the main problems in Anvil yet. Most likely Odin Quincannon, who I'm guessing we'll see in the next episode.
I don't know. He's Quinn listed in 6 out of 10 of the first episodes.
I think they showed him in the next episode preview at the end of this one. So I think we'll see him at least
If
get
they
introduced
do,
to him.
I think if they do, I think it's just going to be a brief introduction of him and maybe something a little bit sick. And I would hope so, a little bit sick, and then from there they'll just move it on until much later in the run of the season, I think.
Yeah, I don't know if he's going to be Jesse's main problem. This way each of the three main characters have their own problem to deal with. But yeah,
Everybody has an adversary that needs to be dealt with.
Yeah, and then DeBlanc and Fiore coming in and causing problems for everybody. So.
And while Jesse shows up here at Quinn Cannon's meet and power to talk with Shrek's wife, who likes the rough dance.
Yeah. Jesse shows up to handle a serious matter that about her this woman being abused by her husband. To find out that she's actually completely okay with it. She likes the rough stuff, and that what her son has seen is completely out of line, out of context. And that was just kind of that reaction that he got when he realizes, wait a minute, this isn't a problem. This is the foreplay was kind of priceless.
Cassidy is gonna make this woman a keg that he can tap whenever he wants.
Yeah, if she's into that kind of stuff, yeah, Cassidy could definitely probably work his way into that.
Oh yeah, this girl's a mess. It's all gonna end up bad for her. I feel bad for her kid who has to live through a mom like this. People, whatever gets you off, gets you off. I'm not here to judge you. Do what you want to do. But
Different
if
strokes
people
for
are getting
different folks.
hurt, that's not cool. That's too much. I can't. I don't know if I can handle that.
I mean,
I'm not.
maybe this is kind of a minor, you know, nod to the whole Jesus Desaad stuff, and his Gomorrah people. I don't know if we're actually going to get to see, this storyline in the show. So maybe
Or
they're saying,
maybe
okay, well, so maybe they're just giving us a little bit.
maybe it's just a simple way to loosen the sphincters of the American public.
This is possible, yeah. I mean,
I mean, if
there
you're
are
gonna
people out
get
there that
into
like it.
if you're gonna get into Jesus Desaad and all the weirdo, crazy stuff that goes on with the Grail and all that, you have to give it to them a little bit at a time and move them on.
Yeah, you
So
can't
here's
just
this
drop
girl
that
that
level
likes a little
straight.
pain. Here's a vampire. Take this little bit, and how do you like that? We'll mix it in with this, and pretty soon we can drop the bomb on them.
Yeah, I mean, in the comic book, yeah, they don't give you, they don't build up to it. They just drop this crazy shit right on your lap. So yeah, but considering that the population of people that reads comic books compared to the people that watch TV shows, it's a completely different, subset of people. You gotta work into it, definitely. So yeah, this could
Yeah,
definitely just be
definitely a
them.
slow roll that's happening, and hopefully it gets much more weird in seasons to come.
Yeah, because the weirdness
So
is part of what made the book so great.
after the little chat with Little Miss Hit Me Wrong, um, our DeBlanc and Fiore end up in Rushka in what I think is the Seth Rogen cameo, but I'm not sure. But
Yeah,
there's a guy out front
that.
in this scene speaking Russian who gets his head blown off at the end of it, and I think it's Seth Rogen, but I could be wrong.
Yeah, I'll let you know when I go back and rewatch it.
Yeah, again, no dialogue here, just them walking in. Obviously, Genesis, the power, decided whoever was there wasn't worthy and scattered out right after he blew them up all over the congregation.
Yeah, and I like the fact that Genesis or whatever this power is visiting different denominations. It starts off with I'm guessing a Catholic church in Africa to a satanic church in Russia, and eventually later on we see on the newscast. Yeah, we eventually see later on in the newscast that he even tries out Scientology.
Yeah. Yeah, so he's spreading the love, trying to figure out what's right and what's wrong, and what's right and what's wrong could be a theme that gets a lot of this in trouble. But I think we're fine that he picks a good-hearted soul in Jesse eventually.
Yeah.
But before he does that, much more going on in Anvil. Tulip and Jesse sit down and talk for the first time in her car with her ear shawarma.
Ear shawarma. I like that. Yeah. That's
great throwaway. What is this? Ear? No, it's shawarma. More. I think it harkens back to Marvel, and then all the love for shawarma.
Well, yeah. I mean, ever since the Avengers, shawarma has definitely been more in the public eye than it ever would have been. So
it's in its heyday right now.
Yeah, I think so.
So as the heyday of shawarma moves on, this scene hits the tone of "We are who we are," a theme that was going to get trounced upon again later in the episode as "I am who I am." So I guess that's what we're setting up here, because there's very little else in this except that she has a job and he doesn't want to do it.
Yeah, they allude to the fact that there was a relationship between the two of them, and it appears to be very different from what it was in the book, where Jessie disappeared on her 5 years in the past, and she was angry and upset, and wasn't necessarily actively looking for him, but when she comes across when she comes across him, her goal shifts from trying to get away to finding out what the hell happened to him 5 years ago. And I don't get there. Obviously, that didn't happen here because she knew where to find him. So
right.
Their relationship is different, and I'm curious what happened. Was it just a bad breakup? Was there some kind of disagreement over a job they had done in the past? So I'm really curious to learn how they're setting up this previous relationship between these two characters.
And a lot of the comic books, some of the comic book dealt with previous relationship of all the characters and things they dealt with in their past. So I'm not going to be surprised when the show goes there. So hopefully
we'll get there eventually.
yeah, eventually we'll get to see what happened in this time between when they were together before all this happened, which would be great because it's gonna be one of the things that's more different from the comic than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, you know, with a show with such heavily character driven, you've got to definitely get into these backstories because that really shapes and influences who these people are. So you can set up a little something here and there, in the episodes, and then build on it later on. Which I'm guessing that's probably what they're going to do. So
yeah, I think this whole episode was about building on things.
Yeah, introductions and teasing about things that are going to come, and just kind of planting the seeds for the future storylines.
Right, and Jesse leaves the car with Tulip, and then we get our first look at Eugene after dealing with a little bit of Sheriff Root and his catatonic wife, which is also a huge departure from the comic.
Definitely. Yeah, in the comic book, the wife had already gone. She had left after what had happened to Eugene, and the interaction even between, we don't see much of the interaction between Hugo and Eugene, but in the book, Hugo was pretty much just ignoring Eugene. He blamed him for his wife leaving, for Eugene's accident. Well, actually, I wouldn't call that an accident. For Eugene's failed suicide attempt, and
right.
Hugo just pretty much written off his son. But here we see in the show, we see him prepping dinner for him, and so he obviously, is still acknowledging his son, and there's some interaction between the two of them. But yeah, this is it's very different from the book.
We haven't seen a different interaction between Hugo and Eugene than in the comics yet, because they haven't been together. They've sat next to each other, but even in the comics, anything with them two was mostly Eugene talking and Sheriff sitting there quietly.
Yeah.
And ignoring him. So that relationship may not have changed just yet. I'm sure even in the comics we understood that he took care of him on a basic level, which was, I'm going to make you your shake.
Yeah, I mean, it possibly we never really saw much of the home life of Hugo and Eugene. So yeah, we don't know if Eugene or Hugo was on some basic level, if at the very least, providing the means for Hugo to take care of himself, or for Eugene to take care of himself.
So at this point, their relationship still could be exactly what it was in the comics. We haven't seen it. We know that Hugo is very different.
Yes.
And Eugene is very different, but we don't know about their relationship.
Yeah, and I'm sure we'll get into that too.
So with our introduction with Eugene, he tells a story that he's not going to church because Hugo thinks he's a distraction for obvious reasons. He looks like an ass, and
literally
they don't explain what happened or why he looks like an ass. And I'm having trouble based on time.
Yes. And
what happened to Eugene?
And the time, this is also going to affect the backstory of another character that we haven't really talked much about yet. But yeah, I mean, Eugene's backstory was he was a huge Nirvana fan, and when him and his friend got the news that Kurt Cobain had killed himself, they decided, after years of being bullied and tortured, that they were going to take the same route. And Eugene failed in that task, which led to his current fashion statement. But with the time shift that they are in now, being how many years later, he would have been either really, really young or not born in the time that Kurt Cobain had killed himself. So
right. Kurt Cobain's no longer relevant.
Yeah. So I want to know what the impetus behind him, if it was just an accident or if he did try to kill himself like in the book and failed. I really want to see how they're going to explain his condition in the show.
They're going to have to come up with a new origin story for the arse, is what they're going to have to do. Because it won't work. You can't tell me that any of these millennial children would have the same feelings about Cobain as a 17-year-old in 1994 when it happened. It's impossible to put somebody in that spot outside of time.
Yeah. I mean, even if he was a huge Nirvana fan in this storyline, why would he have tried to emulate, Kurt Cobain's suicide, 20 some odd years later?
Right. So that's not going to make sense. They're going to have to change his origin story. We'll be okay with that, maybe. I think. But they have Eugene say what I think is one of the most telling lines of the episode is that he keeps praying, but God stopped talking.
Yeah, and that's something that Jesse can relate to because he's given up on God. He stopped, he thinks God has stopped talking to him. He stopped talking to God. So yeah, I mean that obviously brings a connection between those two characters right there. That's something that that might bring about an interesting relationship and interaction in the future between these two characters who feel, they've both been abandoned by God.
Yeah, and Jesse tries to reiterate at the end of their scene together that God doesn't hold a grudge, and that he's going to be forgiven for whatever because that's what God does. God forgives everything, so he's not going to hold a grudge. And I think that's more Jesse telling himself that God's not going to hold a grudge on what he's done in the past more than he's telling our space that, or I'm sorry, Eugene.
Yeah, he's not our space just yet.
He's our space.
Well, he's our space to us, to the people watching the show. He's just Eugene, but he'll eventually become our space.
Should I drop the challenge in this show?
Yeah, go for it.
All right, I'll drop the challenge right now. If we have 1,000 subscribers on YouTube by the end of this season, I will get an R Space tattoo live. So you guys make it happen. Share us, make people subscribe, whatever. You get us to 1,000 by the 10 weeks, I will get an R Space tattoo live.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, my girlfriend's so scared. I'm like, babe, there's no way we're gonna do 1,000. Don't worry.
So where are we gonna get this if we hit that number?
I'm gonna dedicate a thigh to it.
Okay.
It's gonna be big. It's gonna be a big giant cover Glenn Fabry version of R Space.
Okay. Are you gonna go with like the Story of You Know Who cover or?
Yeah, most likely the one with the drool dripping down.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
All right. No, that's good.
I'll do it. All right, 1,000 subscribers on the YouTube channel. Make it happen, Kevin.
Let's make it happen. Yeah.
All right, let's get away from him. So, whoops, I skipped this. Yeah, I skipped one. That was our first technical difficulty. Woo! All right, so in our next little scene, Tom Cruise explodes to open the scene on the television. And Donnie Shrek and his buddies come in after a long day of Civil War reenacting to decide to fight with the preacher. That's a bad call.
Well, yeah, I'm sure he didn't think it was a bad call. Him, guy rolls up with all of his buddies, and who's going to think that a preacher knows how to, fight the way that Jesse does?
And the picture I grabbed from the scene, and I tried to get the best version of that little smile he has.
Yeah.
In the middle of the fight, there's a little slow-mo ding, and he has this perfect little smile, and I thought it was just a great little scene.
Yeah, I mean, I want to see if they're going to show the backstory of Jesse's childhood and the two sick fuckers that raised him, that taught him how to fight the way he knows how to fight.
All right,
because
we'll get to those sick fuckers in a minute.
Yeah, because nobody's going to think that a preacher knows how to fight like this, and
no, not at all.
And considering that he was raised by one of the most sadistic characters this world has ever known, to be as hard as he is. Yeah, I mean, Donnie Shrek certainly barked up the wrong tree this time.
I think it's important that we learn sometime in the future where all of our main characters got their skills. Cassidy's, we can understand, can come from a long life of vampiring. You can gain some skills. Tulip, on the other hand, has this amazing knowledge to whoop people's ass, and we don't know where it come from. My phone's ringing. How professional is that? Could have turned that one off.
It happens.
Thanks, babe. Oh, she called because it's after 4 o'clock. She thought we were done already, and I'm like, no, man, we still got like half hour at least. So yeah, we're doing much better on this one, even longer. So anyways, the fight goes on. It's a good fight sequence. It's all right. I got no problems with it. It ends with the sound that is made by a bunny in a bear trap. Is what he told him he would make the sound of, and he delivered.
As a good Texas boy, Jesse is a man of his word. He does have that honor. That if he says something that's going to happen, it's he's going to hold you to that. And
it's going to happen, and I love the way it happened that he made Chevrolet just hold on 1 second, bang, breaks the arm.
Yeah.
And for some reason, Cassidy ends up in jail next to him. And though Cassidy does nothing but push a chair in that whole thing, is that worthy of incarceration, pushing a chair during a bar fight?
Well, I mean, in the loosest terms, I guess you could say assault, but it's kind of a stretch. I mean, if Sheriff Fruit was going to let the whole town fight each other over a mascot and then arrest a guy over pushing a chair into somebody, it's definitely. I mean, maybe this might be his the little bit of racism we talked about with Hugo that we didn't see earlier. Here's this Irish out of towner, and that's how he's going to start. That's how they're going to like slowly build up that he's this horrible racist.
It reminds me of Blazing Saddles, where he's like, "We'll take the niggers and the chinks, but we won't keep the Irish."
All right, we'll take the Irish.
Right. This is the scene. I popped it up once or twice where they're sitting in jail. This scene is absolutely 100% completely worthless.
I agree.
No reason for it. It doesn't do anything. It barely sets up their relationship together. It's miserably wrong to be in there. There's nothing about it that's important. We don't know how Cassidy got in there. We don't know how Jesse gets out. We don't know when Cassidy gets out, but apparently it's by the next morning.
Well, they said that he was bailed out. I'm guessing Emily is the one that bailed him out.
Okay, but that's not something you can't give us a quick glimpse of her at the bail counter.
Well, no, she was giving him the ride home afterwards.
Okay, all right, he's in the car. All right, you're right.
But yeah, you're right. That this scene doesn't really further the storyline. It doesn't really introduce anything. And as far as I'm concerned, this the accent that Cassidy has in this scene where he's like, what kind of preacher are you? It sounds like just this horrible like cartoon caricature Irish accent that it just really kind of took away from the character a little bit.
This scene didn't need to be here. It could have all been done in a diner with him and Tulip on how we got here, which is exactly how the comic opened in the first place.
Yeah.
So I think they made a bad decision here by creating this lovely scene of him in the airplane where he's breaking skulls and draining blood, but it really makes no point in the story, and it doesn't help him and Jesse come together at all.
No, this is very out of place and just kind of a waste of time. I don't know if it was just that they needed to fill a couple minutes of screen time, or they just thought that this would be a fun scene. But I don't get what it was there for, and it just didn't do anything.
Yeah, I really don't think it propelled the story in any way. You could have just as easily moved on straight to, here's Emily in the car with Jesse. I got you out of jail, and, I'm going to quit. We could have just as easily moved straight on.
Yeah, I mean, jumping there would have been fine. We know that Jesse's having a confidence of faith or a crisis of faith right now, and this, I don't know what it was that finally pushed him over the edge to make that decision that he's going to quit.
Right, that's what should have been in the jail scene. Something that got me to, that's it, I'm done. I mean, and it wasn't there.
If I had to guess, it would be that he just sat there and broke some guy's arm and beat the crap out of 3 other guys. That might be what finally pushed him over the edge and realized, okay, this isn't for me. But on the other hand, they've kind of been setting up throughout the story that that Jesse came back to this town to be a preacher, and following in his daddy's footsteps and going back to his dad's congregation. So for this to be what finally pushes him over the edge, it doesn't really make a lot of sense.
No, I don't think it makes any sense at all. Here's another scene with Emily where she gets upset with the kids because they're kids, and she's grown up with an attitude problem, so she breaks their toy. And
that's an expensive toy to break, too.
It doesn't make me feel sorry for her. It makes me feel like she's a bitch.
Yeah, I mean, she didn't get what she wanted. The man that we're assuming she's been crushing on for who knows how many years has decided he's going to pack up and leave, and she's not going to get, to be with him. And
her reaction is to be a tyrant to her children.
Yeah.
So no, I'm not an Emily fan. And Allison Brie, you would have done a much better job.
Yeah, we'll see if they end up redeeming her in future episodes.
I don't know if they can anymore. I really don't like her.
Yeah, I mean,
so he gets out of the car. He gets out of the car, and she's like, "I'm not going to stop you." And he's like, "Fine, don't stop me." So he starts walking away, and then Ted gives him a jingle. And Ted's on the phone like, "Hey, my mom says it's my fault I got eczema."
yeah, I mean, it's Jesse's fault for answering the phone, but I mean, again, this just adds to the God, I really hate this character, who won't shut up about his insignificant problems. And
I understand what you're doing with Ted, but man, Ted's annoying. Why don't you just look at his phone and go, Ted, nope, ignore. Done.
Exactly.
So, yeah, like again, we have to listen to Ted. And I can't even read my notes. So then he heads into the church because the church is going a little batshit crazy. The lights are all flickering and the doors are slamming. And he goes hopping in the church. And then we cut to a commercial and we get one last shot at Papa Custer. Now, this is a departure you wanted to talk about from the comic books. Is Jesse's dad is a priest in the TV show.
Yeah.
And in the comics, we know him as something else. But I have can't he be both?
I guess he could, but again, this comes back to the timing issue we were talking about with Eugene and the Nirvana. In the books, his dad was a Vietnam vet. And he doesn't look necessarily, I don't think he looks old enough in these flashbacks to have, necessarily served in Vietnam.
Well, I have to say, let's say I'm going to put Jesse Custer in his 30s. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, sounds about right.
All right. I am in my 40s. My father could have served in Vietnam. If Jesse's father had been a bit older than mine, maybe a little later in life, could have served, then had a child, absolutely, I think Jesse Custer's father could have served in Vietnam.
If they want to go with him as being, 18 years old, drafted into the fight and go this route, yeah, I mean, it could work. You might have to, stretch it a little bit to make the timing work, make him a bit older than he was, when we see him in the past. So, we're not quite sure what they're going there, but but the whole thing about making Jesse's father a priest, a preacher, and Jesse now deciding to follow in his father's footsteps, again, big departure from the character because that was never any kind of motivating factor for Jesse.
What would Jesse's motivation with his father have been in the comics?
The thing with his father is he tried to live up to his father's, morals and standards. We kind of got that line, I think the last flashback of Jesse's dad where, he says, you've got to be one of the good ones, son. Why is that? That was pulled directly from the comic book, and that was a great thing because that was one of the things that his father had instilled in Jesse is that, you got to be a good guy. But, Jesse's whole thing was to get away from the family that raised him, or the extended family that raised him. He loved his mom and his dad, but his grandma and her cohorts, it was just, he needed to get away from that. He didn't want to be a preacher. It was kind of thrust upon him, and after being broken down so many times, he finally accepted this fate that was constantly being forced upon him. So this is, so him deciding that he wants to follow in his father's footsteps and go back to the town that his father had, worked so hard to try and save. It's a big difference from who the character was and what he was trying to do.
Okay. Well, we'll see what they do with the backstory on his dad.
But especially, I want to know why his father, a preacher, was being executed. We know why it happened in the books, but if him being a man of God, what would he have had to done to get these two people to get him on his knees and put a bullet in his head, execution style?
Right, which I wanted to bring up. I wrote down here. Does this bring up a possible revenge story for Jesse? Going after the people that gunned down his father.
Well, if it's the same people in the book, possibly. I mean, he didn't ever want to go back there, but when he was taken back there, he saw an opportunity to get the revenge that he did get. So yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible we might see a revenge angle for his father's death.
All right, so
One other thing,
Genesis.
really quick.
Yeah, go
One
ahead.
other thing, and this is going back to the scene with Jesse in the church. Oh no, we hadn't talked. Have we talked about
We
Jesse
just
and
barely broke into that. Yeah, we were getting there.
the one thing that I didn't quite get is, when we see Genesis in the beginning of the show, and then again in South Africa, it is this big ball of white light that just kind of flying through. But yet when we see him in Texas, it's some kind of like invisible force thing. Why the change? Was there a
I
reason for
think,
it?
yeah, I think the reason for it was they had the effects budget from the Abyss, and they wanted to bring in some of that. I don't know. I have no idea. Of course,
Yeah, that scene had me
there's no
scratching my head.
explanation for it. But yeah, you're right. Everything we saw of it was fast and quick and powerful and slams you to the wall. And here it crept up on him, but then slammed him to a wall.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I guess maybe it was dark, and Genesis was like, "Is that you?
Yeah.
Can't tell." I don't know. I got nothing for that.
Yeah.
But he gets imbibed by the spirit,
Yes.
and he's chock full of the Genesis and sleeps for 3 days, and gets up just in time for church. Thank goodness, because what would the townspeople have done? He goes out there and has a congregation that is luckily just entirely filled with the cast of the show.
Well, minus Ted, who had a run-in with Jesse before church actually started.
Right. Yeah. Ted starts his complaining, and Jesse hits him for the first time with the "Be brave, tell her the truth, open your heart," and unknowingly puts the woodgie on poor Ted, and Ted bustles off like he's in a hurry and he can't be late for an important date.
No, not at all.
Poor Ted.
Yeah, I mean, this is, we did get a glimpse of the word in action in the beginning when, the priest shouts quiet and the whole congregation shuts up, but, that was...
All right, so I have another legit question. In the comic, every time Jesse uses the word, his eyes glow red. Now, that seems like a simple thing to me to transfer to the TV show to make the audience understand that something different is happening.
Yeah, instead we got like a little bit, like a minor voice filter, a little bit of like, background, something to kind of give it a little more, importance. But yeah, not what you expect from the book, where it's like this like commanding force that compels people to do whatever it is that Jesse says.
Right. I want,
maybe we'll see that as he starts to.
And I got it.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's something we'll see as Jesse learns about this power and learns how to use it a bit more. We might see that, but if it's just going to be a little bit of a voice effect, that's kind of weak, and I think they could have done better.
I just thought that giving him a little eye blast of red would have been a nice indicator and easy way that you can show him using the voice with a whisper.
Yeah.
And that you can't do with your voice modulation crap.
No.
So fix that, because that's wrong. His eyes need to glow red so that, the layman knows what's going on. Yeah. I get it. But, apparently everybody in this town, though, goes to church. And I have to show you, because I got one extra slide. Can you see the slide that I popped up?
Yeah.
Okay, can you see the couple I've circled?
Yeah.
Who the fuck are they? They're front and center in that shot. Look at his big hat. This guy's done up with the whole shirt and cravat. It looks like old Lucas Neff. They're not in the credits. They're nowhere. And yet they're very front and center in that shot, and it just bothered the shit out of me.
Yeah, I mean, it's like everybody in town's on like one side of the pews, and then you've got this random couple, Cassidy, and a couple other people on the other side.
Right, you got Cassidy sitting behind it, Tulip sitting behind her, and just above the off of Jesse's shoulder, you can see, I think that's the mayor.
Yeah, I think so.
But everybody else, you got Donnie Shrek and his batch of bandits in the back, Hugo and Eugene. So everybody's there. So who are these two fucking people? Because they're somebody.
They gotta be,
They gotta be. So is it a Quinn Cannon, which is possible?
Oh, well, it might be, because there was they cast a character that's playing Odin's son.
His son, right? So is this Quinn Cannon Jr.?
This might be.
It might be. Okay. Well, that would at least make sense to who it is.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I want to say it's Hoover and Featherstone, but I know it's not.
I'd love that.
All right, so that takes us to our last view of DeBlanc and Fiore, and finally we get to hear them say, "It's here."
I don't know if that's a Poltergeist reference or if it's
It's
just yeah.
it's a teabag reference.
Yeah. Yeah, what the F was
Teabag.
that? Is that it? That's how they chose to show us that these two guys are different from everybody else by one guy eating a tea bag.
If you are a Seraphim Angel, apparently your need for caffeine is so incredible that you will eat the entire tea bag. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I don't.
Yeah.
I
I
mean,
didn't get it. I thought it was dumb. As far as showing us they're weird, you could have had him, lick the cup in a weird. I don't. You could have had him eat the
there's a
lid.
number of things they could have done. Yeah,
Right.
that would have.
Yeah. The tea bag was just. It was. I don't know. It was too bizarre. But anyways, they're there. Genesis is there, or the power's there. Everything's about to go down in the next 10 episodes, I'm sure.
Yeah, all the
And
pieces have been set into place, and now it's time to see how the game gets played.
right. And as I look to the future, I really do think it's going to be a slow roll of weirdness. We're going to start you out, like I said, they gave us the very small framework and said, here's a vampire, that's weird. Take it. Go with it,
Yeah.
you'll have a good time. And everybody's like, vampire, on board, good with it. Then they're going to give you Quinn Cannon, and they're going to be like, he fucks meat.
Yeah.
And you're going to be like, oh, he fucks meat. Okay, I'm in.
I hope they stick with that.
I do too, because I would love to see some meat fucker on some television. That's good stuff.
I want to see a large, like 12-foot meat sculpture woman.
So bad, so bad. I would give up Survivor for one of the 2 seasons a year if I can see the meat. I will. I'll absolutely give up one of the 2.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's my thoughts are that's it. It's just a slow roll waiting for the inevitable. Will they get to Hair Star? Will they get to the Saint of Killers? I certainly hope so. I don't think we're going to see John Wayne, because if we haven't seen John Wayne at this point, what's the fucking point of bringing him in?
Well, I think if we're going to see John Wayne, we're going to see it. He's going to show up on a point where Jesse is, in a bit of trouble, or really seriously contemplating something major. John Wayne was that. He was kind of like a moral compass for Jesse, and we haven't really seen him in a position where he is, needing to make one of these kinds of decisions, or do some acts in a way that's gonna really affect him like this. So it's entirely possible we may still see something like this show up, and I really hope they do, because again, that was a great part of the book. This kid who was raised on John Wayne films, who has, after his daddy's killed, his John Wayne comes out and speaks to him and kind of like gives him that guidance that he needs in his life. So we may still see it. I hope we do.
I do too, but I think if they were going to, the little flashbacks with his father were the perfect way to bring John Wayne in as a narrator.
Maybe.
They could have just, well, Pilgrim, things like this happen kind of thing. And they could have just laid the voice on top of what was going on. And then later we can see the shadow. And, because you never really see John Wayne. It's the shadow.
But yeah, with your idea of the slow burn and all that, I mean, it's entirely possible we might, that they haven't shown us everything, or even implied all the stuff is there, that there's still, new things to be introduced along this season that will eventually be built upon later on. I'm hopeful that we're going to get characters like Star and the Santa Killer.
I want some IMDb free spoilers. I want people that aren't characters that aren't listed on there to show up and blow my mind. I really do.
Yeah.
I would love to see Hair Star in the season finale. Just a glimpse. Just give me just the hat. Give me something.
Yeah. Just you see him like arrive at the airport or something in San Francisco.
Yeah. The white shoes getting out of a car would be enough. I would be like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That'd be somebody. Him, the Saint of Killers. Jesus Desaad is the long shot for the show.
Yeah.
He's got to be. So, but we got through this without any technical difficulties.
Yes, we did.
We rocked for over an hour, I believe. So, excellent show, sir. Do you have any other thoughts?
No, I'm just I'm as much as I was scared about the show when I first started seeing the previews, I gotta say I wasn't as completely disappointed as I was expecting to be. So I'm hopeful that this show is gonna surprise me, in the future. Like I said, a big departure from the comic book that I know, but it's still enough to keep me interested coming back every week.
Yeah, I think that I came in with same speculation or skepticism, and Tulip being chief among them, and I think that is gone. I don't have any more problem with Tulip. Jesse is still a work in progress for me because my Jesse is more Olyphant-y. More darker and brooding, and this guy seems to have a little bit of a quirk,
he doesn't have that confidence. He doesn't have that confidence that that swagger, that bravado that the character in the comic book had. That cowboy mentality.
Yeah, when he goes through his whole last sermon about how I'm here to I'm going to save the weak and protect the strong and blah, and I'm like, and then he goes into the church and tells everyone that he's Spider-Man. And that's basically what it boiled down to. It was like, he won't give up and he will become Spider-Man. And then he tells, then we see Ted fulfilling his destiny. And that's what I wrote.
Yeah.
He just goes in and tells him he's going to be cool. With great power comes great responsibility. I got this. Don't worry, Doc Ock's going down.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what I got out of it. But I really was, like I said, I gave it an 8 out of 10. I think you gave it a 6.
Yeah, I mean, it was
upon initial viewing.
Yeah, and I'll have to go back and rewatch it, and future episodes, my opinions are going to change. But I went into this thing with no expectations. I was figuring, okay, this is just going to be, I'm just going to get through this, and I'm not going to like it. But I enjoyed the story. It was like I said before, it was the changes to the characters that really kind of got to me. And the story being as different as it wasn't that big of a deal because I knew I wasn't going to get the exact a screen to comic book complete representation.
Right, we're not getting the Frank Miller preacher.
Sin City, yeah, I know.
Yeah, which is good because look what he did to the Spirit. Sorry. So, but yeah,
no need to be sorry for that one.
We are not getting a frame by frame representation of the comic, and I'm kind of thankful that we're not. Because there's a lot of things that I just didn't feel they could do on TV, let alone AMC. I thought if they were going to do it, HBO or Showtime, Cinemax would have been a much better place to do some of the issues that are in this that I don't think they can deal with to a national TV audience.
Yeah, I mean, but language
maybe
aside,
they're going to try, and they're going to try in a different way here, and I'm okay with that. They seem to be sticking true to a lot of the things that I think are important, and I'm not trying to hold on to the ones that I think are too important that they're not doing.
No, I mean, there are some things from the book that I'd like to see that I don't know if they can find a way to really bring into the show, without kind of, stretching things way too far. Like
Marlon
I'd love
Brando
to see
is the Allfather.
Like I'd love to see, Texas and the Spaceman, the stories of Jesse's dad in Vietnam. Right. 'Cause there's some funny stuff there, finding out about his dad in the Medal of Honor and stuff like that. Just these are all things that kind of build upon this character of who Jesse is and where he came from and his lineage and all that.
They're the Rogue One of Preacher.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a Preacher story, but it's not about Preacher.
Yeah, you're not going to see Jesse in there at all.
No. All right, well, I am looking forward to next week finally getting in another new episode. And I can't wait to talk about it with you because I think we did a hell of a better job this time.
Yes, we did.
I'm glad the technical issues look like they are a thing of the past. And we can move on to doing great shows, getting 1,000 viewers, and getting me an R-Space tattoo.
Let's do it.
All right. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for listening. I hope you liked it. Keep watching The Preacher. Keep listening to the same podcast. Until next time, love many, trust few, and do harm to no one.